What got you motivated to study the organ?
Okay, my name is Mark Tencio. When I was 8, my mother started me with piano lessons, and I think it was a typical experience for an 8-year-old. When I was 12, we moved, and I started with a new teacher, and Margaret Bradford Young. And when I was 15, she suggested I learn organ from her husband, Robert Young. And he would not let me take my first lesson until I had organ shoes. So this was in 1980. There was no internet, there were no cell phones. It was quite difficult to get organ shoes back then, especially for people that were ignorant of the process. But we finally got them, and I took lessons for 1 year from him at our local LDS chapel. And he taught me correct principles right to begin with, which are still with me 4 decades later. He also encouraged me to experiment and to not be hesitant to try the different sounds that the organ could produce. And so I remember being in the chapel, just trying all the different stops and the combinations, and not really understanding the principles behind it and how they function, but learning from the sounds and an interest in experimenting. When I was a student at BYU, I took the 1-semester class, how to help pianists become organists. And frankly, I didn't gain much from that because my teacher had already taught me many of the principles. And so I thought, okay, great, sometime in my life I will be a ward organist. But I was always in callings that prevented that. Elder quorum president, or young men's president, or bishopric, and so it just wasn't meant to be, and we had young kids. And so I would practice here and there, and when I was, I think, 35, had a chance to be a ward organist for a year, and then we moved. And then the whole cycle started again, and I always saw on the wall at the church an advertisement for the BYU Organ Workshop, and thought, when I have time in my life, I will go to that. I will go to something like that. And then I started seeing on Facebook the BYU weekend seminars for organ, and I said, okay, when I have time, I'll go to that. And I finally called, said, okay, I have time. I will go to this. And I called to sign up, and she said, we're full. You can't come. I thought, okay, finally I made time, and they wouldn't even let me go. So I was determined to go the next time. I went to one before the pandemic. I think it was 2018, 19 in Saratoga Springs, Utah. And it was very inspirational and exposed me to many things that I was not familiar with. And I decided I was going to study more. Like Don Cook taught us at the end, there's much more to learn, but don't be overwhelmed. And of course we were overwhelmed, and it was exciting and motivational. So then I made time in my life to come to the BYU Organ Workshop. This is my 3rd year coming, and I've just taken level 1, and that was a tremendous experience, learned many things. And so all the things I've been taught from all these experiences and attending great classes, one of the key things that stood out to me was to help the congregation transition. Don't expose them to too many things too quickly, or they'll not have a positive experience. And so I've been doing that for the last 3 years. And the result of our congregation is that they sing louder, they sing with more confidence. Even this week I was reflecting on it. They show up sooner. I'd say we have more people there before it starts than ever before. Maybe 75% of them are there before the meeting starts. And many of them talk to me about their experiences and how it's different for them, and they'll say things like they like the little embellishments that I did today, but it's many of the principles that I've been learning here at BYU, and I hear them, and they sound marvelous, and they sound inspiring, and it's really an honor to be able to worship together with the congregation that I serve. And so I've had these fantastic experiences, and I'm very grateful for it.
Okay, I'm Bonnie Reed, and this is my sister Betty and my daughter Brianna, and we're from Arizona. We started our love of music from our grandmother, who played the organ, and we all took lessons, and we have a passion for music.
But we didn't take organ lessons, we only took piano lessons.
That's true. And we're not very good at the organ, so that's why we're here, because we want to learn how to play better. So that's my goal to be here, is to learn how to make the organ sound good, despite my not being good.
And I'm the ward organist in my ward, and my mom, convinced me to come with my aunts, and just a fun girls' trip, girls' week. But you've been here more.
Yeah, so I was the first one that came because my good friend was the organist in her ward. And she came up to learn how to play the organ, and then she talked me into coming with her. And I said, but I don't play the organ, and she said, it doesn't matter, it's fun. So I came and brought my sister, and then for like the first 3 years, I just came for fun, to be with my sisters and her. And then I went back to school, and so I told myself I couldn't learn the organ until I finished school, so I wouldn't get sidetracked. And then I bought an organ, and I'm learning, but it's really hard.
It's great. So, what gets you excited about playing the organ? What do you like about it?
I like learning registrations and how to make it sound good, instead of just throwing on some preset, that's already preset. I like to experiment with my own sound, I guess.
When I go and practice, I feel like it's my peaceful place. You know, I'm just there by myself, just practicing, and I just love going down there.
It's our spiritual time of the week.
Yeah.
Reformation. Music is important.
So, what's your favorite part of the BYU Organ Workshops?
Oh, I know. That hand sing along.
Yeah, that's fun.
Oh my gosh, you really think you died and went to heaven and the angels are singing and the organ is playing stuff that you didn't know an organ could do that.
Yeah, and you walk away just feeling so empowered, and it's great. It's great.
Yeah.
And all the classes, you meet so many fun instructors and fellow students, and you learn so much, and you think, wow, how did I not know this before? But it's so good.
They teach you ways to practice. I didn't know there was a way to practice. I didn't know that
Even though you've been playing for...
for 50 years. I didn't know that there was a way to practice, a way to read the music and a way to notate the music before you ever sit down and play it. And then when you make a mistake, you don't go on, you sit and fix that. Yeah.
It's so amazing. Anyway.
Yeah, I just played for state conference this past weekend, and it was so fun to change up registration and learn. We learned that changing registration between verses, and then the power that you can hear the congregation sing, and then they sing with more power, and I don't know, it's just such a great feeling to feel all that, and to know that you're a part of bringing the sweet spirit in there, and being a part of that, and people walk away thinking, wow, I really felt the spirit while I was singing those words, and I felt that power.
Well, I'm Abigail, and I'm 22 years old, and I was not a church member growing up, and so I remember my husband, who was my boyfriend, my senior year of high school. We've been together for 2 years. He finally convinced me that it was okay to go to church with him. And it was the first time I'd ever heard an organ in person. And I looked over to him and I was like, I want to do that. That's cool. And at that point, I didn't even know piano. I wanted to learn the piano my whole life. And this past July, on the 1st, I was baptized, and it's been a process, but a very happy one that I'm very grateful for, and I'm grateful to be learning. 2 weeks after I was baptized, we learned that all of our church organists were moving, because we live in a military town, so people come and go very frequently. And they asked if I wanted to be the ward pianist, and I was like, that'd be lovely, and I'd do that very willingly. But then they asked if I wanted to learn the organ, and our second counselor before he moved was one of our organists, and he had come to BYU's Organ Workshop many years ago, and so he was very aware of it and its benefits, and so he asked if I wanted to go, and I said, of course, I want to do that. So I only found out I was coming about 2 weeks ago, so I had to rework everything with work and school, and I got it all done because I felt that I needed to come. It's very personal, but also spiritual, and just I felt prompted that this was the path for me, and I have learned so much information in the past 24 hours that I don't even know that I could tell you everything that I've learned. It hasn't downloaded in my brain yet. I'm sure I'm going to get home and I'm going to just still feel overwhelmed, but it's a good overwhelming feeling. So.
My name is Logan Berry. I'm from Mesa, Arizona. So here's my organ story. I'm sure a lot of it is same as a bunch of other people here, but anyway, we had a piano in the house growing up. My mom made me take piano lessons, and it was a really valuable skill. And so I did that in elementary school, a little bit of junior high. Had a really good piano teacher. His name was Brent Jorgensen, and he taught me really well. So as I was growing up, like when I was a teenager, every once in a while I would sneak into the chapel and mess around with the organ and say, hey, what does this button do? Just curiosity got the better of me. I got to where I could even make it sound all right. I substituted a couple times. So in Mesa, it was a rapidly growing area in the church, and so living in the same house for 15 years, I think we were in 6 different wards and 3 different stakes. And the newest stake center had a real pipe organ, and yeah, that was some motivation for me to learn. So came home from my mission, got married, moved to a ward in a college town in Tempe, Arizona. I was going to Arizona State University, and like a couple weeks after we got there, the bishop said, "Hey, Brother Barry, our old organist moved out. Guess what? You're it." Gulp. So that was late 2000. So I figured, okay, I really need to learn what I'm doing now. So in 2001, I came to the very first BYU Organ Workshop, and I learned a ton. Learned how unprepared I was to start off with. I didn't even have organ shoes. Apparently you need those, who knew? But man, I learned a ton and I was hooked. So the next year I came back to the 2002 Organ Workshop and learned a ton more and even more hooked. So it makes me thankful that I'm able to be a part of people's worship. It excites me to give that to people. It's boring playing the hymns the same way with the same registration every time, and so I like to mix it up a little bit, and these classes have taught me the right way to mix it up, to not so you're showing off, but you're inspiring people to sing. That's what puts the icing on the cake, is when someone afterwards is like, "Hey man, you really did a good job on the organ. That was inspiring."
I started, back when I was in high school, I had some workshops, but I ran into an organ that didn't have the cheater pedal because I'd never properly learned the pedal, and so I promised myself I wasn't really going to play until I learned the pedal. And so I have just, this last few months, have wanted a way to worship. And so the thought came to me that the psalm with a loud noise, and I have thought about the organ because we've got Brother Kaysen in our stake, and that's been really amazing and a great experience to hear the organ done really well and how it's changed the worship
And so I just enjoy what the organ can do. And I've seen the organists that have come from our ward that have come here and how they've been trying to improve upon, you know, what they've been doing. And so I really wanted to try this. And so I started playing the organ again a few months ago, and actually learning the pedal this time. And I've just really been enjoying the worship aspect of it. Like, that's been helping me feel close to the Savior.
It's great. So, would you recommend the BYU Organ Workshops to other people?
Yes.
And why?
I love it. It's been really encouraging. I've enjoyed just hearing all of the different professors. The music theory has been fun, more so than maybe reading through a book. And just seeing what's ahead for the certification level that I'm working on right now, being able to see and hear all of the songs and the energy. It's fun to make some organ friends who've been through some of the same situations, and it's been funny, a lot of camaraderie. So, and just a lot of, you can feel the spirit when you come and the energy, and it's been just inspiring to hear, like, to do the hymn sing on last night was so wonderful, and just kind of a glimpse of what can be done in worshiping yourself and helping others to worship.
Hello, my name is Linda Neely. I'm from Mesa, Arizona. I have been drafted to play the organ since I was 20 years old as a pianist. And I have always loved the organ, although it took me a long time to know how to do the sustained touch. I've had no organ lessons for years and years and years. But one day, I was attending a funeral, and the organist at the funeral was amazing. This was about 10 years ago. And she played so beautifully. It was just so, even though it was a funeral, it was so delightful to listen to her prelude music with her changes of registration and the thoughtfulness she put into her performance. So after the funeral, I went up and complimented her and asked her how she learned to play so well. And she said, the BYU Organ Workshop. And I thought, aha, that's what I need. I need a place to learn to play the organ officially. So this is my third year, and I just want to tell you how much I love the BYU Organ Workshop. Every instructor is just dedicated to meet you at your level, and they are so humble and so kind and so willing to teach. I have been around musicians quite a bit in my life, having a music education degree, and I have seen many an arrogant teacher and fellow musician, but here at the Organ Workshop, that is not the case. They love their students, and they try to teach them and help them in every way they can to become a better organist. This workshop has changed my life and made me, I hope I have many years ahead of me in my life, but it has changed my philosophy and actually changed my life and how I approach the organ. Please come. You will not be disappointed.
Hi, I'm Savannah Mon. I'm most recently from Lamar's, Iowa. My very first experience with the organ, oh gosh, now I'm remembering other stuff, but we'll start. Shortly after I graduated, I did my undergrad here in music ed. I heard there was someone in our stake who was giving free organ lessons, and as a music ed major, I didn't really care which instrument it was on. I said, free lessons, I'm there. And so I show up, and it happened to be Dr. Parley Belknap. And so that was it was so fun. But I was only able to take for about 4 months because we moved up to Salt Lake, and I drove down, but then we moved up to Logan. I figured that was a little far. I didn't take lessons in Logan because I was a stay-at-home mom and my husband was a grad student, so finances are tight. But, sorry, we went to K-State for my husband's PhD, and after some time there, they split the ward and all the keyboardists went into the other unit, and someone somewhere had heard I had organ lessons. So obviously I got called as an organist, but I don't have a piano background. I majored on tuba and was just self-taught on the piano, you know, plinking stuff out of the hymns. So my keyboard skills are still growing, but it just so happened that Dr. Pickering is at K-State and he was in the other ward. So I started taking from him off and on for the next 3 years, and it was about the time that his oldest daughter Audrey was getting into the organ as well, and so he was writing his fantastic trios for us for our Sunday services, and because I could not play out of the hymn book initially, that was definitely some growth, and they were amazing. The Spirit has led me along as I've come to really appreciate that music is very much a part of my journey on earth, and especially I felt that I've been all over the place. I've played the violin and the tuba and the trombone, you know, I've played all the instruments, and playing the organ just feels like coming home. That's my voice. So coming here is one of the bravest things I've done in a really long time. There's a lot of insecurities that come from not doing well in a degree program. And so I just felt the Spirit say that I needed to be here this week. And I almost didn't come because it was so scary. But for me, the fact that I'm playing the organ is very much an expression of my faith in my Heavenly Father, because He's asked me to do this. And if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't be here. I put that Philippians verse all over my literature for the week, you know, that I can do all things through Christ which strengtheneth me. So that's why I'm here, and I have just been filled. I don't know if there could have been a more perfect experience. 10 out of 5 stars, you know. It's been fantastic, and my cup has just, I feel like my cup overfloweth. So my goal for next year is to have a bigger cup so I can get more stuff. But it's really helped me to address some of my concerns. How to practice and performance anxiety being probably the 2 biggest things, but it's also just given me so much motivation to move forward with my goals and to move forward with my organ playing, because I know that we're expected to share our talents to, you know, further the kingdom of God. And I firmly believe that the Lord expects us to intentionally develop those talents so that we can be of even better service. And yes, that's why I'm here. The Organ Workshop has been phenomenal. I'm so grateful for the things I've learned, for the friends I've made, and just for the motivation and the courage to move forward on my journey.
Hello, my name is John Harris. I'm from Huntsville, Utah. How I came to get to know the organ and learn to love the organ, I think when I was young, we used to go to a stake conference down the Autumn Tabernacle, and I've heard that organ, and I thought, I just love the sounds that come from that, and maybe that gave me a spark that someday I would do it. When I was about 8 or 9, I started piano lessons. And then when I went to the next grade, local music store had an idea of bringing the organs, little Kimball organs, to the school and have kids learn to play the organ. So that's how I really started learning to play organ. So I was doing piano lessons and doing that little organ thing at the same time. My piano teacher was also our ward organist, so she made sure we learned the hymns. So when we got a little bit older, she took us to the church and let us play on the organ there. And then when I was 12, I started playing the organ for our priesthood meetings. So I did that all through my teenage years. So I was pretty diligent about going to the church every Saturday and practice for an hour and learned the hymns. And I think my piano teacher gave me a pedal exercise book, so I started learning that. And even during those years, I had opportunities to play for state priesthood meetings, and once in a while Sunday school, and maybe once in a while at sacrament meeting. When I entered college, I decided to take organ lessons. It was at Weber State University, and his name was Wayne Deverell, was a prominent organist up in the Ogden area. So I had a year of lessons through that. And then just kind of plugged along. And then I heard about the BYU, at that time it was a church music workshop, and I thought, I'm going to try that out. And I thought it was good, and I learned so much that it really expanded my horizons. So I thought, well, I'll try some of those certifications, and started working on that. So that really gave me ideas of how to improve my playing, and maybe doing some things different in the hymn playing and stuff. So I tried to apply all those things with that. And so I've had opportunities to play for state conferences and ward meetings and other things also. Past couple years, coming to Bonnie Goodliff gave her little talk on the AGO certification. And I was kind of inspired. I thought, okay, I'm going to try that, because I think the year before I went to an AGO convention here in Salt Lake, and they were announcing this person earned their college degree, this person. I thought, you know what? I'm probably just as good as they are, so I thought I'll give it a try. So, but after I listening to Sister Goodlove talk, I thought, well, I'll start with the service playing and start with that. And I learned and I practiced and I passed it. So it gave me motivation. Okay, I'll go on for the college exam too. So, and it took me twice to pass it, but I did. So I mean, the BYU workshop really has helped me expand my knowledge of organ playing and the repertoire, and coming here gets you inspired and wants you to practice, and it just appreciate all the help and the lectures and the concerts. It really is inspiring. Thank you.
I'm Becky Griswold from Idaho, and the organ's been haunting me kind of all my life. I wasn't a member growing up, and my grandmother was the assistant organist at the church that she went to, although she's pretty good because she was self-taught in the area of the left foot only kind of thing. But she had an organ at home, and I was taking piano lessons, and I'd have to ask special permission for her to turn her organ on for me so I could doodle on the organ. And I was able to do that for a few years before they moved and sold her organ. And then a while later, after I joined the church, they did a stake organ workshop, and I thought, well, that sounds interesting. So I went to that. Nothing came of that. I guess I've been ignoring it. And after a while, we were living in Rochester, New York. And my husband worked for a piano and organ store. And it just happened to be about the same time that Richard Elliott was doing his master's, doctorate, I think it was master's, at Eastman School of Music. And he worked at the piano store where my husband worked. So we kind of got to know him, my husband obviously better than I did. And he did an organ workshop kind of dealy while he was there. I don't think they called it that, but I thought, yeah, I can do this sometime. Sometime after that, somebody asked me to sub on the organ, and it's like, you're kidding me, right? I mean, I was kind of confident with, although I get performance anxiety, but called my husband over, and he only really knew as much about the organ, you know, enough to demonstrate the organ to sell it. But he came over and set a few tabs for me, and I was off. I thought, well, okay, this is pretty cool. But it wasn't until sometime after he passed away, and the one ward I was living in, or the ward I moved into, Bishop decided I needed to be the organist. I said, seriously, how am I going to practice this organ thing? They did give me a key. And so a year-ish into it, I saw a poster for the organ workshop. And I looked at it and got online and started researching it. And I said, gosh, I can't afford that right now. Okay, so I'm saving up my pennies, and for the next 2 or 3 years, I'm thinking, I got to go to this. So in 2012, I finally made it to the organ workshop. And I've been coming ever since. There was one year, it was COVID year, and I'm thinking, you know, I paid, get ready to go, and they shut it down for COVID, and I could go, oh crap, now what? You know, I've gotten so used to doing this, I need to do this. And it was getting closer, and it was announced that they were going to do it online. And by the time I saw that, I was so thankful because I had gotten COVID. Well, the camaraderie is awesome, and the encouragement that you get from that. Mm-hmm. And I was telling a friend earlier this week, I said, you know, I'm going to all these classes, and, you know, I go to the same classes over and over and over again. And, you know, in theory this year was the one thing where, you know, it just clicked this time.
Wow.
You know, I hear the same things, and I told her too, I said, I am so glad that the teachers were kind of shifted around and you weren't getting the same teacher all the time. And I said, you know, having a different teacher, you know, it just clicked this year. I said, oh, I think I got that one.
Okay, my name is Tammy Grimmett. I'm originally from Idaho Falls, Idaho, where I currently live. I took 1 month of organ lessons before I left for college and didn't have much to do with it. I moved to San Diego after I graduated, and they didn't have anybody to play, so they called me to be the organist. I just played that 1 month. So I did 1 month on the piano and then moved to the organ and did that for quite a few years. I went back to school and didn't do it during that time, but then ever since then, I've always had an organ calling. I played at the San Diego Naval Training Center for the recruits, and they could select any hymn they wanted to, so I learned to play every hymn in the hymn book, and decided I needed to learn to play them better though. And so I heard about the organ workshops, I think through a flyer on the ward bulletin board, and have been, this is only my second time attending, but the first time I found 2 or 3 things that I could try that helped me to be a better organist, and so I've implemented those, and then came back to learn a few more new things to try, and then we'll try those for the next year. I like learning new things and just learning, what can make you a better organist. I've decided that's the best thing that I can do to contribute, where my little bit of talent lies, and so I might as well try and magnify that and try and learn a little bit better. And so just new registrations that would help to bring the spirit to a meeting, things like that I want to try.
So I'm Cheryl Wood, and I'm from Benicia, California. Benicia was the first state capital of California. The reason I started playing the organ was because I set a goal to have it as my bucket list, and I prayed about who to take lessons from. My husband was an organist for our ward. He was the ward organist. My mother-in-law, his mother, taught organ, taught piano, and I took lessons from her for a little while with piano and as an older person. And then when I set a goal, I prayed about finding a teacher that was professional, that would teach me the correct way to play the organ. I knew that you needed shoes. I knew that there were certain requirements, and so that's what I prayed about, that I would find a great teacher that was close. So I went to the organ workshop with 0. I was a minus 20, I'll say, on the scale of, there are 6 levels, and I was probably a minus 50, because I didn't have a really solid piano background. I started as an adult, so I had a lot of gaps. And when I went to the organ workshop, the first person I ran into, I asked, do you know any organ teachers that would be willing to teach me? She happened to be a student of one of the teachers here, whose name is Elizabeth Forsyth, who is probably, I consider, the best on the West Coast in terms of professionalism. She's a professional organist. So I felt blessed to be able to find such a person, and I went to the organ workshop. She happened to be the person who was orchestrating the pre-workshop tests, and so I walked into that class, and there are certain things you have to pass, and I tried for the whole class, and I was unable to accomplish any of those tasks. There were people that were walking out within a 5-minute period that were passing off, and within 10 minutes, and I was sitting there still struggling, still trying to achieve so I could pass off this pre-workshop so I could get into the workshop and I left and came back the next day and asked Elizabeth Forsyth if she would agree to have me try again, and she told me that there were people that were waiting, and that she would have to see if there was room. So I again tried, and I think I passed. She passed me off, and then I was able to take some classes at the organ workshop. The organ workshop was really the thing that helped me the most, and I highly recommend having a teacher, which I had, to supplement whatever I learned and reinforce whatever I learned at the organ workshop. So I continued with Elizabeth Forsyth, and she told me right away initially that she gave people about 6 months to find out if she was going to continue with them. So I guess I continued because I've been attending the organ workshop now for about 5 years. My journey has been a somewhat rocky one because I was working full time. I was teaching English, and I would try to squeeze in my other activities, and then I would have time at the end of the day to, after I went swimming, to go and practice at the church. And I was just freezing cold, and I would get down on my knees and just ask Heavenly Father for help, if I was supposed to continue this, what I was supposed to do. And I ended up filling in for my husband as ward organist at different times for the closing hymn and the postlude, and then I all of a sudden ended up as one of the ward organists. So that's my story in a nutshell. I highly recommend the organ workshop. It's a great way to have access to just fantastic teachers, and you are with the tabernacle organist. There was one point a couple years ago where my husband said, well, why don't you ask Joseph Peoples if he will teach you a few lessons? And I was very reluctant because of my background. And I did ask him, and I have taken lessons virtually with him for a year, and then he recently closed down his studio. But there's no other place where you can really learn the basics and keep going on different levels and have that opportunity to have access to teachers that are world-renowned almost, and also listen to music, organ music and organ concerts every single day. You're just inundated with being able to listen to how things are supposed to sound, and I think that has been a real blessing for me. But I think that there have been many, many times when I have been discouraged. It took me 2 years to learn Redeemer of Israel. So if you're feeling discouraged, don't be. I would go to my lesson and just go sit in the car and cry for an hour and just tell myself that I was going to learn Redeemer of Israel the right way, and I was going to have it also have a feeling behind it, a spirit behind it. And now when I play for church, my goal is to be an instrument in God's hands. I know that I have many weaknesses, and I know that many times I'm not able to play the hymn perfectly when I practice, and then I just pray and leave the rest up to God, and I just turn it over to God and just talk to Him and say, I have worked as hard as I can, and now I need the angels to attend me. And I have felt the Spirit, and my goal is that people will feel the Spirit when I play, and then I will comfort them, and the angels will be in attendance with me. And the other thing that's really great about the organ workshop is that you get the opportunity every other year to play something that you prepared on one of the organs at Tabernacle Square. So the first year that I was here, when I barely knew anything, I set a goal that I would come the next year and play at the Tabernacle, something that I had prepared. And I told my 6 kids that, and they thought that I was a little bit off. They thought that was a little lofty goal. But I did come the next year, and I did play a simple piece. It was called Deliverance, and it's a arrangement by Richard Elliott. So I've gone through different steps, and I think the organ is a step-by-step process, and that you need to keep that in mind, that it seems like you're inundated, it's over whatever you know. But for me, as a non-music major, as a weak pianist, and a person that has many flaws in terms of performance, I think that if I can do it, anybody can do it. The organ has been my solace. It's been a conduit to heaven. It's been a way that I feel that I can transcend the everyday struggles that I have faced and the everyday traumas that I've had, and to be with angels and be with God and go to a more serene place, a heavenly place. And when I played at the tabernacle, I had a remarkable experience because I could not play Deliverance correctly when I was practicing. I remember I went to the supervised practice and I was struggling, and the teacher said, "Why are you doing this? Who are you doing this for?" And I said, "I am doing this for all those who have passed before me through the veil, because they really would, I know my mom would have liked to have known that I pursued the piano, because we didn't have a piano at our house, and that was a lofty goal for me to achieve, that I had learned the piano at an old age." And I learned how to play I started playing the organ when I was about 64. So, if you think you're too old, you got to get rid of that perception. But I did feel when I touched the organ at the tabernacle that I wasn't cognizant of the fingering. I just got translated almost into a different sphere, where I felt like the angels were just lifting my fingers across the keys, and I was totally in a celestial environment and a celestial plane. And to me, that's how I've benefited from playing the organ, is that it has me transcend to a more celestial environment in my life.
My name is Jeremy Fail. I've been playing the organ since I was 13. I'm 27 now, so it's been 14 years. I started taking piano when I was 7, and I liked piano. I still like piano, but it wasn't as cool to me. I wish I could remember exactly what I said to my first piano teacher to, how it kind of came about. So I can't remember that far back, but I know that from a young age I was always interested. I think it probably just watching conference and seeing the organ, and always just the power that, it's such a powerful instrument, and wonderful sounds and all the things that come with the organ. And my first piano teacher, she couldn't teach me the organ because she didn't know how to play it. She knew just little bits. She was able to kind of teach me just a little bit of legato technique on the piano, and so I started with that and kind of got used to, holding the notes and attack and release a little bit different than the piano. And so I kind of got a little used to that, and I was like, okay, this is cool. And I graduated from her and started taking from another piano teacher, and she had her master's degree in piano, but had also taken some organ classes here at BYU. And so she's like, well, I can teach you. And she's in my ward, and she plays the organ. And so she said, oh yeah, we can do that. And so I split my time between piano and organ. And so it was like one week I do piano lesson, and the next week I do an organ lesson, and we just go back and forth. And that, at the beginning I was like, oh, this is cool, but I wasn't really into it. It wasn't until I was 14 and I was taking a trip with my grandparents, and we went to Paris, Idaho. It's a small little town in Idaho, and they have a tabernacle there. It's a beautiful building. It's been there for a long time, and they have a pipe organ there. It's a fairly small pipe organ. It's not, the Salt Lake Tabernacle, but it was a cool pipe organ, and we got to go in there and see it up close. And my grandma. She's like, you know, my grandson, he plays the organ, you know, could he play this? And they said, well, we're not, you know, we can't really, the missionaries there, they said we can't really do that, but why don't you come back later after we're done with all the tours for today, and maybe we'll let you play it. So we went about our day and went to some other sites around the area, and then came back that evening, and they said, yeah, we'll let you go in, and they unlocked the door and let me go in there, and I'd never played a pipe organ before. I'd played a digital organ at our ward, but at that point, all I could do was hymns. I couldn't even do anything fancy at that point. But they turned on the pipe organ for me, and so I was able to just play a couple hymns, and they were like, oh, you should come back. I guess they do a little 4th of July parade every year, and they said, you should come back and be our organist for the parade. And I never did it because it's such a drive from Utah, but it was a fun experience, and that, playing that pipe organ, I believe, is really what made me like, this is my instrument, made me decide that this is what I love. What I always like to say is I play the piano, but I feel the organ, and it's because when I play it, it just brings something really special to me, and I sometimes I even just get emotional just playing hymns or anything that, I have a deep love for the hymns and the scriptures that they are, and a lot of people, I feel like, don't really pay attention to the text, and there's so much that we can get out of that. And so my goal as an organist is to get people to pay attention to that, and so that's what I always try to do every Sunday, and just share my love and my testimony through the organ and the hymns and the music, through playing the organ, and so unfortunately I had to stop taking lessons when I was a teenager, and because I started developing a lot of medical problems, and it took about 8 years to figure out all my medical problems, and so there was a period of time where I didn't play, I didn't practice, I wasn't even able to go to church, and so it really was a hard time. But in fact, I came to almost dislike the piano and organ at that time, because I felt like I had this talent, and why was I having to deal with this? Anyway, but it was in 2020 that my uncle, he committed suicide, and I was asked to play at his service, and I hadn't practiced in a couple of years, and so I started practicing a little bit, and it came back to me. It's like riding a bike, but it was it kind of made me realize what I was missing out on, and I wasn't sharing my love for the music anymore. And so at the time I was still going to school for computer science, and I needed an art credit and to graduate, and so I took a music class that I was like, oh, this will be a piece of cake. So it's just like an introduction to music class, and I just needed an easy A. I needed to get this degree done, and it was also in 2020 and during COVID, and so I took it online, and it was after this funeral had happened, and really reinvigorated my love for music, because I was able to do things that I hadn't done in so long, and able to listen to recitals and analyze pieces, and all of the theory was coming back to me, and did a presentation on one of my favorite composers, and that was fun, and And so I started getting back into it. I bought an organ, and it's like, I'm going all in. And I started practicing, and I started getting into it again, and started really making a love for the music again. And I signed up to do the BYU workshop in 2020, and then COVID happened, and so I didn't go, and I didn't want to do the online. I really wanted to go in person, and then 2021 came around, and it just didn't work out scheduling wise, and so, but then I came 2022, and that was an amazing experience. I got to play the tabernacle organ, and that was special. But I learned so much from that, and just deepened my love for the hymns in this gospel, and the hymn sing was probably the highlight of the week. There wasn't a single song that I made it through without crying, so I just get so emotional. But it was truly it was a neat experience, and I was like, I gotta come every year. And so I made it a goal that I was going to keep working on my talents and growing those again, and come to the workshop every year, and hopefully, anyway, we'll see how it goes. But yeah, I mean, for me, I started teaching this year. I mean, that's a huge turnaround from 5 years ago. I started teaching piano, and this year I really wanted to focus on ways to better teach my students, and I'd love to get them on the organ and share that instrument with them, and so it was, how can I do that? How can I do that? And so the workshop so far has helped me come up with a lot of great ideas to do that, and I definitely recommend the workshop to anybody, even if you don't play the organ and you just have, what is this instrument, the king of instruments, what is it? Come to the workshop. It really is great. The amount that I've learned at the workshop last year and this year surpasses anything that I learned in the past 10 years. I mean, it's so much amazing information, and it's so well done. And if I could bring my whole stake, my whole ward, everybody who plays to it, or everybody who could play, I would. I totally would. I mean, it's one of those things where, if we could just get more people, that's what I would love to do. And I'm trying to put together something for my stake, because I want to share that. And I think once you come to the workshop, it just becomes something else. It really does. So I can't stress.
All right, my name is Stan Karchner. I'm from Tucson, Arizona, and you had a question for me.
What first interested you in the organ?
It's kind of an interesting story, because I started playing the piano when I was about 8 years old. I'd shown some interest at school, and my teacher told my parents, and they'd bought a piano and got me started on piano lessons. And then later on in the ward, I'd played for priesthood meetings and that sort of thing, just playing the hymns on the piano. And it wasn't until I was probably, around a freshman in high school, that the organist and music chairman for our ward wanted to get me started on organ. She had no formal training practically at all. I think she had maybe come to one or two kind of workshop sort of things. And she got me on the old Conn organ. I remember it was a Conn. It had tubes, all tube organs, so I'm sure it didn't sound very good, but it's what we had. And at least it wasn't a Hammond, right? So it had regular stops and that sort of thing. So she showed me just some very basics, about stops and that sort of thing. She said, And there's this idea of independence of the line, and I'm just going to tell you what it is, but that's all I know about it, and that's all I could really tell you about the organ. So she showed me, and I actually took enough interest that I started playing the pedals and so forth fairly quickly, just on my own without any training, but just trying to get it figured out. So I started playing for the ward. And then we moved to another town while we were having our house built, and so I was able to play on a larger, I think it was an old Allen Digital, one of the first Allen Digitals, and started playing on that. And so it was through church that I got my exposure to organ. It was just playing for meetings and that sort of thing. It wasn't until I was, I think I was a junior, no, a freshman in college, and I was getting ready to go on my mission. I remember this distinctly, and I went and watched the movie Rollerball. Now that was real outside because it was actually rated R, but I really wanted to see this movie, and I don't know why I went and watched that movie, but it was a marvelous movie, and in that movie, and I can't remember who the organist was, but they played the Toccata and Fugue in D minor by J.S. Bach, the one that we all know. And that got me so excited. I went out and bought the music, the sheet music, that day, and started learning how to play Toccata and Fugue in D minor. Very badly, by the way. I in fact, after I came home from my mission, I took a music appreciation course as one of my general ed requirements. And I somehow got the organist at the nearby Methodist church to let me play on their instrument, and I recorded a very bad rendition of Toccata and Fugue in D minor and submitted that as my assignment, if you will, my project assignment for that music appreciation class. But the professor was actually very grateful that I'd gone to that effort and gave me a good grade in the class. So I guess it was okay. But I had no formal training. I just knew I loved it. After 3 years, and I played the organ for my ward, on a regular basis, and did that throughout my college days there at the University of Arizona. I moved up to Provo as a senior, and at the University of Arizona at the time, by the way, I had inquired about trying to take some organ lessons, and they just weren't accommodating to that. And I don't know why. They just didn't seem to accommodate non-majors at that time. That has since changed, but at the time it just wasn't possible. And I don't even know what instrument they had at the time, because they didn't have their current instrument, which is a nice Schoenstein, but they didn't have that then. Anyway, so I couldn't take the organ any lessons, and so I had no training to speak of. I didn't know who to take lessons from. So I went up to BYU, and we had our state conference, and I played the piano for the ward, for priesthood or whatever, and we always had our meetings. Did you go to BYU? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you had your church meetings, your Sunday meetings in whatever classroom they could put you in, usually one with a piano at least, so you at least had a piano. So I would play for those meetings, and that was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. One of the best experiences I had with church music, by the way, was even though I didn't have a leadership calling, because I was a pianist, I ended up being invited to go to the stake leadership training meetings to play the piano. And so I was able to hear all these wonderful speakers, and at the time, it was not unusual for us to have a member of the Quorum of the 12 or a 70 come to those leadership training meetings. So for me, it was just a wonderful way to get exposure to the church and to the priesthood leadership, just by playing music, by being a musician and being willing to play the piano. So we had our state conferences in the Provo Tabernacle, and that was back in the day, before the fire, of course, and before they had upgraded the instrument or refurbished it. I think there was a major project to refurbish it, but this was back in the early 80s. So I was back there from 80 to 83. And I heard the organist play on that organ, and it has that great acoustic, and Did you ever go to a meeting there? Yeah, okay. And I just thought, that is so cool. So I went up there and talked to the guy. I said, boy, I really want to play this organ, you know, just to play on it. And he was an organ major at the university. And what I didn't fully appreciate is that he was looking for someone to take his place because he had other things to do. So he asked, did you play the organ? I said, yeah, sort of, you know. So he had me play him. He says, great, how would you like to play the organ for the stake? So I became the stake organist. And we had our stake meetings at the Provo Tabernacle, and it was just wonderful to play that instrument. For me, I didn't know how to register things properly. I had no training at all, you know, in terms of, I just did what I thought sounded good. Rex Lee was our stake president, and at the time he was I think he was the dean of the law school. It was before he became the president of the university. But he and my Bishop Lyman Moody were really good friends, and his wife, Rex Lee's wife, just loved how I played the organ because I played fast and loud, and she thought that was great. But that was my first exposure to an environment where you had all sorts of reverb. And even to this day, I don't play in very many venues with that kind of reverb. So I had to get used to just simply playing and not paying attention to what I was hearing from the congregation, but just, you know, following the conductor and playing what I knew I needed to be playing to kind of maintain some sense of rhythm. During that period of time, and I don't remember what it was, but one of those summers, I actually came over here to the School of Music and found out that they actually did encourage non-organ majors to take lessons. In other words, they made that possible, unlike at the University of Arizona. So I actually took a few lessons from Parley Belknap. That was my first formal training, and he had me play hymn. I played, what's the one they play at the dedications? I can't think of it. At the temple dedications. The hymn that they always play.
The Spirit of God?
What's that?
The Spirit of God?
Yeah, the Spirit of God, thank you. My brain dead. So I played the Spirit of God for him. He says, you have good rhythm. So, you know, my technique was terrible, but I at least had good rhythm. And so I took a few lessons, and I think just because by then I was in grad school and so forth, it just didn't work out where I could really devote the time, or I didn't do it. I wish I had more, but I just didn't, so I had just those few. I really didn't start taking lessons formally until I came back, and probably, 10, 15 years later, as well into my 30s, yeah, I think late 30s, that I actually started studying with a local organist at a local Methodist church, Catalina Methodist. And they had it was a Schlichter, or I can't remember what they had, but it was a 3 manual instrument. And that's when I first actually started getting some real lessons, and that was very helpful. And before I started those, I think it was after that. But so I took from her for, I think maybe 2 or 3 years, or maybe it was only a year. It wasn't a long period of time, but it was great. And then I decided I needed to get a different instructor. Somewhere during that process, I learned about Organ Tutor. And this was version 1 of Organ Tutor. This is where you had the CD and you put it in the computer and you went through it. But I went through that before I started taking those lessons, formal lessons at the university, where I then started studying. I went through Organ Tutor. It was wonderful. It was very helpful to me because it gave me some foundation, in some of those fundamental skills. And then I started studying with Pamela Decker, who's the organ professor at the University of Arizona, and that was just wonderful. We had a 3 manual Schoenstein there, and they welcomed me as actually I was an organ major then. I just signed up as an organ major.
Oh.
Yeah, because I could, and I ended up taking lessons over a period that total about 10 years. I didn't always do it every semester, but about 10 years worth of lessons, and that was just extremely helpful, very nice. But then I actually got the training, and by the way, when I was studying with that other organist, I finally learned the toccata and fugue in D minor at a level that was at least semi-acceptable after all those years and decades, that I'd been trying to learn that piece. So that was a wonderful thing. But it really was kind of ironic that it was that movie that got me interested in the classical, high art form of organ. And of course, I still love playing for church. I play, you know, once or twice a month for my ward, and often play for state conferences. I actually get recruited for another state because their organist left, so I recently played for their state conference, and I've done that a few times. But it's fun because I'm dealing with really good music directors, you know, the choir directors and so forth. So that's my story of organ. And then I've been coming to the BYU Organ Workshop for, I think this is my 4th or 5th one if you include the online one. So I hadn't done it until more recently, but it's been wonderful. And just the exposure to all these great instructors and organists, and the amount of quality instruction that's available is just phenomenal. You know, the people who come and teach and so forth, it's just amazing. And so my original exposure to Don Cook was through the organ tutor program, but way back when, version 1.
Wow.
And I still am, you know, still learning, and I really enjoy learning the learning process, and occasionally I still practice. Oh, and I'm also involved with the local guild chapter. And I think that's very important for LDS organists, and far too many are get involved in my area. We only have like 2 or 3 of us as members of the church who are involved in the local guild chapter, and I think that's very important. And they love that. They love the participation of our church members because they haven't had a lot of that. So, you know, that's been very helpful. And a good opportunity to serve and be involved with the organ community at large, and not just in the church.
Right. So how do you think that the Guild helps the LDS organists then?
Well,
like what would be the benefit?
First of all, the Guild has just done a much better job at education. I think part of that is certainly attributable to Don Cook and his 2 terms as the education counselor. But I think just in general, there's been a push to try to reach out to more than just the professional organists, more of the lay organists and those who are not as experienced. They've been trying to promote the certification process more. I did get the colleague certification. I passed the playing portion of the associate, but I just finally gave up after I failed the written a couple of times. So I understand they've changed that now. We'll see. Maybe one of these days I'll retake it. But it was good. It was a good learning process, even just having done the playing portion. I'm glad I did that because I felt like I was being able to play at a higher level. So I enjoyed that. But I think the Guild is reaching out more to the non-professional and the lay organist, if you will. And certainly that's most helpful to our members. And just being exposed to good organ music, I just think it helps you be a better organist at a ward and stake level. If you can hear very fine organists play, if you go to those concerts that the Guild either sponsors or co-sponsors, or even in the community where there's organ concerts and recitals going on, I think it's helpful to have members involved, and we still don't do that nearly enough in the Tucson area.
That's great. Thank you. Tell me how Don Cook has influenced you.
Well, through organ tutor. Yeah, that was my original. And then also I had a secondary exposure to him when Shinji Inagi, who was Don Cook's one of his organ students, before he came to the University of Arizona for his doctoral, he was involved with the new LDS organist project and helped develop that. So I had that, but most recently it's just coming to the organ workshop and seeing Don and just interacting with him on a casual basis.
Great. So I'm Dale Karras, coming to the 2023 BYU Organ Workshop. I've been trying to come for a while, basically being a student or starting new jobs. It's kind of cost prohibitive to travel when you're on the student budget, so I said, well, as soon as I start a career, I can try and come over. And then it was always, work just started and I can't leave for a full week and have to kind of get through the honeymoon phase of all that. I remembered up until 2020, I said 2020 was going to be the first year, I can finally do the organ workshop. And I can't, so now 2023 is the first year I'm able to do it. Yeah, coming from a point of really being interested in the organ, I grew up playing piano, so I think maybe it's my bias because I know a lot of piano people who probably take up the organ just because there's kind of a certain opportunities, especially playing in churches. I don't know if there's a lot of other aspects where people like it unless they're playing like a keyboard or doing some pop song. There's probably more of a market now for like video game music, and people who have the money want to go see like those pop concerts and things like that. But I remembered being really passionate about music when I was younger. Of course, I hated it. The parents would put the egg timer on the piano and say, "You don't get off until that timer," then try to push it forward a little bit and stuff. And no, we're counting, you gotta go 5 more minutes. So give it enough time, you start to find your own voice, you start to really get through some of the annoying exercises and letting it fit together. I remembered discovering transposition on my own because I was just playing around. And I was, oh my goodness, and I was so excited to tell my music teacher and say, look what I found out, what you can do. And I thought I had discovered transposition on my own. And then, no, we'll get to that. And it's, oh, okay, well, it's just the pattern recognition aspect. So I think by then there's like little moments of joy you tend to get with it. And I think that a lot of the support is you have to, as a kid, when you're around a lot of adults, make sure you're around a lot of adults who say, oh, I used to play piano and I really regret it, I gave it up and I can't play it anymore. So it kind of teaches you, oh, I guess I shouldn't give this up even though I don't like it. But once you get to a certain point, it becomes very enjoyable. In school, I kind of knew I wanted to pursue it more because I'm kind of curious about what it entails. But at the time, parents were really pushing me toward, you definitely do music because we didn't have the opportunity. So kind of being more first generation, you don't really know what the academic pursuit of it tends to be. Growing up too, I come from a Catholic and Greek Orthodox background, but didn't really have flavors of religion until a little bit later. So kind of studying music too, I think you kind of find the flavors of theology sometimes as, oh, I can understand the Victorian era novels and the allusions that kind of come with it. But I think when I was older, there was a difference of seeing certain groups or younger people who'd carry around scriptures with them rather than just thinking, oh, like religion's for old people on their deathbed kind of mentality. But the other aspect of seeing it being very fluid with, you take the music history courses and the fact that the preservation of all the early music was because the church was very instrumental in being able to do that. And you find that, oh, all of music history has so much to do with religiosity and how there's kind of the tie, like the doctrine of affections that comes out of the Romantic era, that it elevates you, it does something more, I think, of the Bernstein lecture of just how it magnifies so many emotions that are indescribable. That's why you have to have the music, the teleological impact of it. I had seen, especially even among different churches, who tends to favor groups of music, and I think sometimes I kind of came with a personal bias of, well, I like the music, and then kind of the church fits in sometimes afterward. And that gets you to some degree because you have like the diversity of being able to discover different kinds of repertoire, certain aspects of instrumentation. And when I first went into school, I said, well, I want to do music, I don't know what I can do. And they say, well, there's music education and music therapy, and it's tended to be pretty dominated already. And I said, well, music performance, and I said, I have to practice 14 hours a day, I don't think I can do that. So I said, maybe I'll do composition because I don't feel like I'm very creative and I can spark something a little bit more creative that way. So I decided to try to go to the composition program, and my background is also with math and science, so theory came very naturally to me. And I think sometimes you'd have a whole class on like a passing tone and neighbor tone. It's like, it's so simple, I don't know why we need a whole class on some of this. But then you get into the performance stuff and it's just, I cannot figure this out. I have a tendency to read more horizontally than vertically, so just trying to put two things together, it's like trying to get all that worked out. So you got 3 voices and 4 voices, and I think even mathematically I see in the essence of orchestration, you have so many beautiful pieces when you have it satiated with the right groupings of different instruments. And most pianists would kind of tell you the whole orchestra is condensed within the piano. you kind of find that to a degree, but then when I kind of saw the organ, and I'm like, wow, it's more complicated than being in the cockpit of a plane. It's I have to figure out how this works, because I feel like I should be able to approach this, because you get in front of a harpsichord and you do like some different ornamentation, it's a little bit more accessible. I think you can do like a accordion and kind of figure it out and stuff, so you kind of want to show your ability with any kind of keyboard instrument. When you get to the organ, it's just, okay, I'm curious about this and really want to discover this as well. And comparably, this led to also very good avenues, because I had friends who were very supportive, and also comparable theological journey I was kind of going through. I think my original pursuit was to be very academic about it, very skeptical, very a point of just seeing in a secular capacity it can be very damaging. That's the extent of how we have a lot of conflict and things like that. But when you kind of have the musical element there, a lot of that would kind of evaporate and be pretty nice in terms of just, oh, this is really the heart of what I'm getting at, and this is a lifelong journey. The essence of testimony is nothing cathartic. I think there's moments of that, but everything that you tend to have that gets into the realm of the extraordinary, the more supernatural in a way of thinking, and this essence is takes several lifetimes to be able to really understand. But as a point of communication, as a point of being receptive of these things that are almost supernatural, music was kind of the avenue to understand this. I think even texts that could be adapted to hymns and have this uniqueness kind of in the Wagnerian style of the Gesamtkunstwerk, the total work of art. You have all the spiritual resources available to you to really amplify the essence of your any kind of religious journey you have, and comparing some scripture to like what you find like in a hymn book. It's just, wow, sometimes the hymn book would speak so much more to me in terms of being able to make sense of how a lot of this content was going. So I think it was fairly symbiotic, being able to really push yourself, like kind of as an obligation of 1 Peter 3:15. You should always be very equipped according to what you're trying to pursue in your testimony in terms of how you try to pursue truth, and also have a very good academic mindset of being able to understand more of the point of music and how it can really be supported. So thinking of orchestration, the organ is really what encapsulates the whole orchestra, and there's so much, such a different technique. I think that there's a lot of pianists who defenestrate Bach because it's just too hard and they don't like to admit it. They, oh, it's kind of boring, it's you play one song, you've kind of played them all, and it's just, no, there's so much going on that it opens up so many other doors in terms of where you see, especially the more minority composers who don't get enough love, just how much influence there is of the times and how they're using a lot of the same techniques, because you just kind of go after a sense of bias, you cherry pick what's popular, and that's not enough. You always want to have that appetite of trying to collect more information. And I remembered in terms of learning the organ, it was already very nice because having a point in a role in the church was just very impacting. Being able to have this instrument, especially, to be able to use in a sense of amplification, and people would come up to me and say, oh, I really love this, and this was so beautiful, and I said, I don't think I'm doing a good job at all, and I feel like it could be even better. It was kind of a good point. But to people who wanted to share on that and to have points of ensembles, characteristic of empathy, you would have a lot of people too about what are their talents, what are they able to support, and how do you kind of have that more equipped and have influential literature that's going to bring the Spirit. A lot of that is kind of showcasing your journey, how you should really endeavor to improve on the organ when it is available, or even some piano technique and how that leverages each other. when people first approach organ playing, they definitely play it like a piano, and then they realize it doesn't sound good, so they find some of the new technological features like the couplers and just, I can play one note and the whole organ makes it sound like I have 4 hands and I'm playing a bunch of stuff. I remember early on there was this, people had very high expectations, and the music director, I think it was, they gave me True to the Faith, which was very complicated when you didn't see it before. And so I was practicing it, and a friend of mine said, well, they have the song bank in that digital organ, so you can play it and hear how it sounds. And I realized, well, I could just play it during sacrament meeting, and I don't think anyone's going to tell the difference. So I totally cheated and played the song bank instead of doing the actual hymn, and I'm just, ghost playing. And everyone's going, that was amazing, I've never heard, that was so good, you've been practicing and stuff. And it gave me kind of a point of some guilt, because I was like, well, technology is going to really help things out, but I hate to think that we're going to get to that point where it's just, we are artificially bringing the Spirit. We are doing things as a point of ease rather than really taking the journey for ourselves. If you ask, if the missionaries were to come over and say, hey, like, check out this book, like, or what do you believe, or what is this about? Oh, you gotta just read the book, and they don't have any testimony that's unique or signature to them. You need to have the congruous capabilities, I think, too, in terms of a lot of points of how you use this with your own signature style. That is what people are about. People want to know that from you. They want to know what speaks to you. They want to know how God is influencing you. They don't want to just have something regurgitated or echoed in a way that's not going to be as impacting, given how dynamic we are as a society and how there's a lot of new challenges, a lot of new things that kind of come about. This is a very dynamic commitment I think we need to have too, in terms of just recognizing not just even a small containment of specific literature that we find is going to be spiritually uplifting. There's a lot of modern things that maybe don't sound especially good, but it's very foretelling of the times. It's a point of how do we really extend beyond what we've used before, and we're not just kind of in this just a weird cycle where we're not really giving it our own emphasis as well. So I think that mindset of not wanting to be constrained in any particular style. I think sometimes there would be times, depending on where work would take me, going into different wards. Sometimes it's culture shock with different groups of people, and you don't really know certain people, and you kind of devalue what it is because you kind of relegate things to formulas. A big point of my testimony too is I think that I've suffered because I've wanted things on my own terms. I've wanted things to work out in a certain way that would be almost as accessible when you see other figures, gospel figures and prophets from old times and things. And sometimes because I think of how it's summarized, you don't really think about all the adversity that people go through. You think of all the practice it takes to get to some degree of competency. That afflicted so many people to be able to get to where they're at. And it's been very powerful just knowing that, don't stay in some comfort zone because there's so much more value to be had out of it. Always challenge yourself, be a student for the rest of your life, and take advantage of all the resources available. I would be in an institute and see like, oh, this here, essentially free or heavily subsidized, and just, I need to take advantage. Like, why am I not doing this in a way? With a mindfulness of, I think that with that honeymoon phase of, ooh, like this is all brand new to me and I want to, test everything out in a way, you can get overwhelmed. I think I've seen even not only just musicians, but people become so afflicted because they are such perfectionists, and it really does a number, I think, emotionally in terms of where things can go. So what a lot of approaching something as difficult as the organ has taught me is just, this is like life. This is extremely complicated. There's so many combinations of ways this can go about. There's such a unique ethical responsibility of the subjective and the objective. Does any combination of things just work because different points of preference come about? Is there one solution that is better than all the others? And I think that divide of just what is authoritative versus what is not, what is going to be beautiful, what brings about truth, what is useful, so many different intersections of philosophy and epistemology come about, and it's just really amazing. But it's the essence of music, this higher level of what it brings. It's a wonderful invitation to just almost like therapy. I think you just have this all available to you. You're in so much more control than you realize, but you have a lot of responsibility about how to program this, about how to imbue a sense of prioritization. Is this helpful to whom? What do people need? Programming certain songs that, with the amplified nature of music, gives text that people really need. I think that there is so much there that is characteristic of people with that musical responsibility. Embrace that leadership quality. Know that you're bringing in such an important aspect of what gives the lifeblood of the church, what gives it a sense of activity, what sets it apart from a lot of other points of organization and a sense of confusion, people trying to figure out what really matters in life. I was really grateful to attend here. It's only day 2, maybe 1.5, because I think Monday was really just like tours and things, but there's a really amazing dedicated faculty, a lot of active learners coming from all over the place. I've seen people where I'm in the minority of people where it's the first time coming. People come repeatedly because there's so much still to learn. But I hope there's going to be such a shift with how the point of religiosity is kind of considered, how there's the Christological response to social issues, where the station of the church is going to be. And this was through Kampala, we're studying Acts, and just, we've been given this commission. We want to embrace the nature of Christ, but what do? We're still so lost because we've been given enough to have a knowledge of things, but are still now commanded as leaders, make this work, make it compatible with the Spirit, take advantage of these opportunities, at least try and derive healthy energy going about it with good self-awareness to be able to not only support yourself, support the people around you. Through all this, it's the light of Christ, it's love, it's the most powerful elements of what we have in the church environment, to be able to use this, give it to ourselves, give it to others, give it to God.